spent the day in the dark house with Mike Holmes.
I grew up in a spearing family. My dad made decoys, my grandfather made fish decoys.
And Kristen was in the Keweenaw for a look at a bunch of deer. 9 million acres of forest, 1,700 miles of continuous shoreline, 4,300 lakes, 12,000 miles of streams, more than 300 waterfalls, 15 counties, 2 time zones, and 1 area code. Welcome to the Upper Peninsula. Welcome to 906 Outdoors. .906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by Cooking Wild Seasonings.
Sail away.
There are an estimated 20,000 dark house fishermen in Michigan who enjoy the sport of spearing. This historic form of angling has been practiced by die-hard fishermen for over 2 centuries. It's as much a tradition as it is a sport. And fishermen like Mike Holmes wouldn't trade it for anything.
I grew up in a spearing family. My dad made decoys, my grandfather made fish decoys. My uncle, who's now in his 80s, he used to do the shows, and he lives in Idaho, and he carved lots of decoys, and so it's in a family, it's kind of our tradition, and I got hooked at an early age, and like most things that you do when you're a youngster, you do it, and then later in your life you look back and gee, that was pretty neat. The first sighting of spearing by Native Americans was over by the Mackinac Bridge. Obviously, the bridge wasn't there in 1763, but we basically had the same setup. They had 3 things. They had a structure, and over there it was just like a little hut that they made out of bent tag alders, and then they threw a tarp over it, and they had a decoy, and in that case, it was reported that they had some shells, clam shells, and just for an attractor, and then they had a spear. That's all we have here. We're sitting inside of a structure, or the spearing, a dark house. And the term dark house is because there's no windows in here. You use the light that comes through the ice, and the fish don't see you up here. So your movement, you can move around. If you had a window in here, the movement, they'd spook all the time, or even a bump. And you've got a spear, and you've got a decoy. And so nothing's changed. And we're here it's about 16 feet of water here. And the fish that we're targeting here go out and suspend in the big lake, and then they'll feed out there, and they'll come in here. You don't see herring and whitefish in here, and even smelt you don't see in here because it's too shallow. So that's where they're out, and then they come back in and lay around until that's digested. And every big fish that is in the belly of the ones we spear are all taken in from the head, and that's why when they'll come in and they'll hit the decoy, they'll injure it, and then they'll come back in and they'll grab it by the head and then suck it in.
.906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by Christ, your Northwoods neighborhood store.
For getting into spearfishing, you don't have to have a fancy wooden shack. You really don't. These pop-up tents now that they've got, I spear with guys that from North Dakota and in Minnesota and locals, and as long as you got, most of it's as dark as you can, so you don't have any light behind you, so the fish can see the movement, because as soon as anything comes above them and moves, they spook. I mean, that's just their instinct. So that's all you need. Or a teepee tent those jacquard teepee tents that you see up in Lake Superior, the guys that are all bobbing lake trout, and I've got 3 of them. I've speared lots of fish over the years, even before I built my permanent shacks. And at spear, any sport shop has them, but the one thing I would recommend, you want to get a spear that has good big barbs right here. A lot of the ones that you'll buy in a local sport shop, they put them on a bandsaw, a metal bandsaw, and they'll cut it in and then they'll pull that out. And it doesn't hold the fish. You've really got it. You really have to sink your spear into that fish before it holds very good. And good spears are expensive. I mean, expensive anywhere from $75 up to $300. This is a $300 spear right here. Your spear is as important to fishing or spearing as it is, shotgun or a rifle is to hunting. Look at 2 of them. Let me see. Oh, that one. I saw that one last week. The screwed up tail on it. The decoys, you don't have to carve them. It's your preference, but you can. There's a lot of decoys. I every time I go into Cabela's or any other sport show, I gander them out, and everybody's got decoys, and they all work. They all work. They don't have to be wood, and they don't have to be decorative. And even if you want to take a daredevil, a red and white daredevil, take the hooks off or leave the hooks on and just jiggle it. There's a lot of decoys out there that guys make that are just a piece of wood, a flat piece of wood, and when they pull it, they've got different colors on it. It's anything to get those fish to come in within the distance that you want to, so you can throw the spear and harvest. The other thing is you don't throw the spear. You put the head of the spear in the water first, and you just put it in there, because if you splash it in like that before you release it, the fish is going to be gone. So you got to put it in there, and then slide it. Just hold your hand right here like this, and then push it. You just push it. And the other thing is that when you've got the head of your spear is below the water, there's no refraction. So you're on the same fraction level as the fish is. So all you got to do is just aim. And if you've got, it's like anything else. A grouse flushes, you lead it. And if you got a fish coming in or going out, you want to throw at the head. And the best place that you'll normally hit it is right at the base of the fish's skull. About 32, I'd say. I don't like to put my fish outside of my shack and throw them on the ice. I like to kill them first, and then what I'd like to do is, I don't want blood outside, so people are aware that you're getting one, because it's not uncommon to have it's not uncommon to have people put a tip up right outside your door. It's happened before. It's a good eating size right there. You can get into spearing for, if you want to get real fancy, just by buying tents and things. You can do it for probably $200-300. A shack like I've got a 6x6. The materials were about $600. You got to remember, you're only going to do this one time. You're going to purchase one spear, so get a good one. And there's a lot of old antique spears that are good also. But you're going to pay top dollar for antique spears, because there's a lot of collectors out there. And the same thing for older fish decoys. You're going to, if you get them from an antique shop, you're going to pay a lot for them. Cutting the hole, I've got an ice saw that I cut the hole. You make a hole with an auger. If the ice is 12 inches or less, you can saw very comfortably with the saw, but you don't need a saw. You can take any ice auger and you could just kind of overlap the circles and make a square. The thing that you run into, though, when you get thicker ice is that you either have to take that ice out or you have to push it under. Well, that's a lot of weight to push underneath the ice. It's a lot easier to pick up some tongs. Every spearfishman I know has one or two. Once you cut all the auger holes all the way around, you put a few auger holes right in the middle of that chunk of ice and take your ice chisel and break it up into chunks and pull it up. You mark your hole when you're done, whether you put all of your ice chunks back in or you take sticks and put in there or get some branches off the shoreline and mark that. Somebody can fall in that or drive a vehicle in it if it's not marked. Like that, how's that?
906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by Blades Bait and Tackle, your year-round connection to fishing Keweenaw.
One of the best places for a beginner to locate a good spot for spearing is weed edges. And what happens is that your bigger predator fish will follow that. They follow that line, and on the one side you've got the weeds, and on the other side is deeper water. And what they're looking for is to get a minnow or any type of small fish out in the deeper water, and they scoot to them and scare them out in deeper water, and then they can, they're easy prey then. You want to do this all in the fall when the weeds, your cabbage, that's that big flat weed, it's done growing for the year. You can GPS it then, or you can, like when we were kids, we would tie a line on a tree that we marked on shore and just fed the line out until we actually measured where the weed edge was and marked it, and then we actually put a knot in it, and then come good ice, we'd walk out, we attach that rope to the same tree and go out. That's always a good place to start. Anytime you've got some type of cover for your predator fish and cover for the bait fish, you're going to get, the two are going to collide somewhere along the way. So, you can be there above there with your decoy down and waiting for, that situation to create itself. One more, little bit of advice. If you're going to put something on the bottom to give you a clarification as to where the bottom is, especially in water that's a little bit brown or has a tannic acid, tannic brown water, you want to always try to use and only use eggshells, because they dissolve. It takes about a month for them to dissolve, but the eggshells are made of calcium, and the natural acid in the waters will dissolve that over the time, and it doesn't hurt it. It actually helps it a little bit because of the I don't know how much it would help, but at least you're not putting pieces of tin foil down or anything like that that's gonna be there for the eternity. So you look down, if you can see down the hole, you can see how the contrast, especially when you get there early in the morning or late in the afternoon, you've got a little bit of a contrast, so you can see where the bottom is, and so when your decoy is down, you've got a background for it. On decoys, guys will say, well, when they come in, how do they hit them? And it's any scenario. I mean, it's sometimes they'll come in fast and they'll just destroy grab it and shake it and drop it and then come back, or they'll just come in and swing through it and hit it, try to injure it. And sometimes, they'll come in real slow and they give you a really nice slow shot on it. That's a nice one. No, that's that same one. Jeez. And the important thing with your decoys is that when your decoy is underwater and the fish comes in, there's no refraction, so the same size of your decoy, you can estimate how big the fish is. And if you know the size of your decoys, like that's a 15-inch decoy, well, they've got to be 24 inches, so you just got to add to it. I've actually have one decoy, it's in the truck, that it's 24 inches. I've had 15-inch pike come in and hit that 24-inch decoy too. So it doesn't matter what size of the decoy, but I prefer more natural fish, and I like bigger decoys. These articulated decoys, you see, all these ones up here, except for that one, has a tail, and that tail gives you direction. Okay, left or right when it's bent. When you put it in the water, it's going to go that way. With the articulated ones, there's the tail is moving. So what you have to do, you can see the curve in the head. It's like that. And so what happens is that water catches that side of it. So that's what you get to make your fish, turn in that direction. And it's it's not real easy to get that. Oh, that's a nice one. Oh, he turned.
Yeah.
Well, you can show a miss.
See everything.
There you go. Yeah, you spend hours and hours making these, the decoys. The amount of hours that you put into it, and then you see it actually swimming. And the best thing is when a pike or muskie comes in and it actually hits it, or even comes in and swipes at it. I mean, you always have a smile on your face because it's something you created. It's something that you've got your heart into, and it's working, and it's the satisfaction. And when you get to be my age, there's it means even more. So.
Today's show is brought to you in part by Rapid River Knife Works, home of Michigan's largest custom knife factory showroom.
In the northern parts of the UP, white-tailed deer have adapted to deep snow conditions by migrating to locations that provide both food and shelter to survive the winter. Deer begin migrating typically in mid to late December. These migratory destinations are called deer wintering complexes, and currently there are 57 named complexes in the Upper Peninsula. In the Keweenaw, there are 2, east and west, expanding from the Portage Canal north along the Lake Superior shoreline.
This is right kind of at the extreme for them, and with the weather that we've been getting and the snow, it just makes it very difficult for them. And because of the Portage Canal, they really can't travel too far south to get away from it. This is where they come, and we're just trying to help them out.
It's like ringing the dinner bell. If there's any that are hanging back, they hear this and come running, like those guys down there.
I met up with Richard and Cynthia Marsh just before feeding time, and the deer were already waiting for their supper.
My wife Cynthia and I purchased this property. The previous owner had been feeding deer here under permit with the DNR for almost 15 years. And one of the the handshake agreements was that we would at least continue feeding for at least 1 year, because he really was a big proponent of feeding the deer, and it was a big love affair for him. And it's kind of a full-time job starting in January and through May, basically feeding the deer every day. Right now we're running about 200 deer that we're feeding now, which is similar to what we were feeding last January. And then as we get into February and March, those numbers will jump sometimes as high as 400. There'll be a day in May we'll wake up and they'll be gone. Which it's amazing, and it's basically May through December. We only have about a dozen resident deer in this area here, but the numbers jump once the snow starts accumulating. Once you get above 24 inches, it starts to become very difficult for the deer to dig down through to find any type of natural food. I mean, their go-to food would be acorns if they could get down to them, and that's why it's important that they have some type of food or a supplement. They're perfectly capable of scrounging and eating bark and tips of a lot of the browse that's out there. But with the food the way it is, and let's face it, they can't really travel too far once the snow gets this deep, and it's easy for them to overbrowse an area. So the supplemental feed tends to help them get through that. Otherwise, the mortality rate for the deer in this area would probably be closer to 50% without the supplemental feed.
The Marshes feed 1 ton of food every 5 days for a total of 15 tons in a season.
The feed for this project is graciously donated by the Calumet Keweenaw Sportsman's Club, and they've been feeding deer forever. They purchase typically around 60 tons of feed a year and distribute it to other feeders in the area. All of us basically are required to have a permit issued by the DNR authorizing us to feed. The permit from the DNR has very specific guidelines for us as to what we're supposed to do and what we can't do. Over the years, the club has pretty much settled on the pelletized feed because it's the best feed and it has everything that deer need for this time of year. The previous owner was kind of a MacGyver when it came to that type of stuff, and so he built that sled. It'll hold about 300 pounds of pellets, so we can get 6 bags in it. It puts out a nice line of pellets, and it tends to help to avoid a lot of the nose-to-nose contact that the DNR worries about, because with the way it spreads it out, it's most of the time the deer eat up the little line of pellets pretty quick, so they tend to just kind of move along a little better than if you would just put out a big pile. By putting out a line like we do and stringing it out for quite a while, it tends to spread out the feeding opportunity to a lot more of the deer. I've been a hunter most of my life, but I've learned more about deer in the last year and a half than I knew for the last probably 40 or 50 years. It's interesting to watch the way they become somewhat territorial over areas, the dynamics of them, especially when they're walking the deer trails. 2 of them will come together in a deer trail, and the dominant deer gets to stay in the deer trail, and the less dominant deer has to step off into the deep snow to let the dominant deer go by. It's just fascinating to watch. If they were here 365, they would probably drive us insane. But fortunately, we get about a 4 to 5 month reprieve from them.
Feel free to join us on Facebook or visit us at 906outdoors.com for a look at all of our shows, shopping, and more. Thanks for watching, and we invite you to join us next week for another adventure right here on 906 Outdoors.